I've seen Vicki at this event, and I've also seen her at the VIP events, and she always brings a nice sparkle, joy, and groundedness to the whole atmosphere. So you're in for a very nice treat today. Vicki Dello Joio is the founder and author of The Way of Joy, a spiritual fitness program. She's a transformational speaker, life-changing workshop leader, and show-stopping theater performer whose brand of brilliance is motivating people to claim their birthright of joy. Inducted recently into the Women's Martial Arts Hall of Fame for, yeah, I know, isn't that great? Congratulations. With over 40 years of experience teaching Chi practices, Vicki guides appreciative audience to embody these lessons in their very selves so that their transformation stays with them for a lifetime. So we're going to dive in today. She's going to help us discover 3 key essentials you need to thrive in your business and your life, and how to craft your story so it stands out from a crowd, because sometimes it can be wah wah wah, right? So we're gonna change that up, and and so we're gonna really power this up. So please welcome to the stage Vicki Dello Joio.
The year is 1990. I'm picking up a friend who is needing a ride in San Francisco in Noe Valley. I pull up to the street, to the curb. I get out of my car. I look around. I'm going to jaywalk, right? So I'm going to walk across the street in the middle of the street, but I check to make sure there's no cars. I see a car coming up to a stop sign. I think, no problem. I begin walking. As I'm walking, I'm thinking, I can't stand it. I'm so stressed all the time. I need to change things. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to find a new life. I'm just, you know how you can get into a loop sometimes and you're just not getting it? I look over my shoulder again. The car that was supposed to stop at the stop sign evidently didn't stop, is coming at me at 30 miles an hour. It's about 5 feet from my body. Now, I know, because I've been doing martial arts for a long time, I know that I don't want to go force against force, that I want to go in the same direction that the force is coming. So I turn my head, I get hit, I get thrown up into the air. Time stops. It's like this time out of time. I remember this so well because I felt like I was a seed inside of a hull. I remember like my consciousness came to the size of a pin. It came right into my lower abdomen. And I remember looking around and seeing the silhouette of my body from the inside out. I don't know how else to describe it. I know it sounds a little weird, but that's what was happening. I'm looking around and I'm thinking to myself, I really am just a seed. Who I am, Vicki, is a seed inside of this hull, Vicki. I can choose to stay in this hull, or I can choose to go. It was not at all a given that I was going to stay or that I wanted to live. I was actually struggling with some depression at that point and was just really feeling like out of alignment with who I am. Well, obviously, you know the choice I made, right? I decided to stay. I open my eyes, and as I'm coming down towards the ground, right, because I had been thrown way up, I'm coming down towards the ground. I tuck into an Aikido roll, stand up, and begin to do this movement that comes from Qigong. The guy who's driving the car stops. He goes, "What are you doing? You're supposed to lie down. Lie down." Well, I could keep going about this story, but the reason I'm telling it today was when I was thinking about thriving, I was thinking about what is it that actually makes someone thrive? What does thriving actually mean? And how do I look at that in terms of a choice as opposed to a result? How can I thrive regardless? We're all, I think most of us here are business people of some kind or another. We know that business does this, right? It goes up, down, up, down. How do I still see this all as thriving? Some of you have probably heard me talk. I sometimes talk about the topic of resistance and what that does to us. But I was thinking a lot about how those choices happen. So when you hear the word thrive, What are some of the things that you think? What are the characteristics of thriving? Confidence. Growth. Allowance. What? I'm sorry. Energy. Joy. Blossoming. Action. Movement. Abundance. Excitement. Yeah, that's how I think of it too. So then I started to think about, well, what does that mean in terms of the kind of inevitability of expansion and contraction? I was a theater person for a long time. I still do a lot of theater. Some of you have seen my one-woman show and stuff, but I used to do a lot of theater, and then I stopped for a while because it felt like a lot of times I would expand, I'd be on stage, I'd get full houses, standing locations, great reviews, fabulous, and then I would crash. It was almost like part of me would say, get back in the box, or I would take a risk. Like anytime I took a risk, I would get on a stage for a speaking gig or something like that. I had a very difficult father, very critical, and it was like I would look around to see where's that father's disapproval. Somehow I would find the face. You know, they might have just been thinking about what they were having for lunch. But I was like, no, this is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I'm going to focus on. That's that whole thing of focus. And I know you know this. I don't feel like I'm telling you anything new. But I think that there's something in there about where we put our focus, both in the dips and in the lifts. I've had a lot of success in my business in the last couple of years. Pretty much every event that I've done has been sold out. I've done some sold out shows, more standing ovations. I mean, it's been kind of an amazing year. I did this really cool thing called the 7-day challenge for the first time at the end of November, right after the election. And what I decided to do was to kind of invite people to do some kind of chi practice every day. I did this virtually. I had people from Australia, Japan, New Zealand, Mexico, Canada, across the United States. It was a lot of places in Europe. It was a really kind of amazing success because people were very engaged, interacting. And then there was that decision to, what am I going to do with this crash? Right? Because every expansion is followed by a contraction. Think about it, right? The ocean goes out, it comes in, right? Your lungs expand, contract. We have day, night, expand, contract, expand, contract. So my inner work has been a lot about how do I contract in a way that's loving and that sort of takes care of myself. Does this make sense to you? Good. So that what happens is when you get out there, for example, if you're on stage a lot, or you're speaking to a lot of people, or you're taking a risk at talking to a new client that you really would love to have, you'd really love to have them sign up with you, and then you walk away going, oh, I don't know if that worked or not. How do we make space for that contraction to happen? And how can that be part of how we actually thrive? So I want to share some of the things. I mean, I'm kind of going in and out of sort of what was happening for me is, let me describe this. It's like there's these ideas that are popping, and I'm going like this. Oh yeah. I want to tell them this. But when I really think about what is it that I really want to say, what I think it is that there's a balance that I'm looking for between your internal part, the part that Rebecca talks about, the why, the passion, that part, what happens internally, which for me is how I work with the Qi practices that I teach. So I'm a master teacher of Qigong, which is a Chinese martial art for healing. And what I've been doing in the last, 10 years or so, is look, how can we take the energy that would allow you to, break through a board without hurting yourself, or break through it with your head without hurting yourself? How do we take that energy and put it into our business? And so I really look at, how do I move chi? How do I let energy flow through me? That's the internal. And when that is in place, when we have that internal energy in place, we expand. We really step out. It's the yin, the internal, coming out to the yang. The other thing that I do with my clients, I work with a lot of people that I think of as wise, wild women, people who are really there with messages that want to change the world, artists, visionary leaders, business people. And I teach people how to speak, telling a story so that their audiences can feel what they're saying, not just hear I love this wah, wah, wah. I think I want to be a wah, wah, wah buster. Yeah, so that's what I am. I'm a wah, wah, wah buster. And what I find is when I teach people sort of the basic skills of how do you craft a story, what does a story look like, then what happens is inevitably, and this is 100% of the time, and I always have full sold-out workshops for this, is they go through some kind of internal transformation. There are a lot of people here who've taken workshops, day-longs, or programs with me. If you raise your hand, you can ask them the way I work, because I don't want to tell you all of that stuff, but just to say that it's so important to me that when we tell our story, especially if we think of ourselves as a messenger, especially if we think of ourselves as somebody who has something to offer to the world, that we learn how to craft it well. It's our responsibility. I'm very passionate about how we do that. So when we do this yang expression, tell our story, there's that internal shift. So that's how I balance yin and yang. Kathleen was talking about yin and yang earlier, and I was going, oh yeah, let's bring that into the room. So I want to share some tips with you about what makes a good story. Are you interested in that? Great. Before I do, I should just tell you that I think several of you know me pretty well, but I want to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. When I was a kid, I grew up in New York City. My dad was a very well-known composer. The standards were really high. The people who hung out in my house was Vladimir Horowitz, Martha Graham. My father wrote 3 of her ballets. I mean, I was with a lot of high-end artists, and so the expectations were really high, but the attitude was my dad was very working class. It was all like, churn it out, get things done, very practical. What you see is what you get. I was so afraid when I moved to California, I would become one of those woo-woo people who believed in energy or things you can't touch. Right? That's how I've been making my living for the last 30 years, right? You kind of become your own worst fear. But what I want to say about the people that I work with is that we need to learn how to balance our caretaking, right? A lot of us talk about self-care with expanding our bandwidth so we can actually absorb what we need to absorb, sustain our energy so that as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, contracting, even bigger, that as we do that we're able to be fully thriving, regardless of where we are in that expansion, contraction. This is all new material for me to talk about, so I want to see if it's landing. Is it landing for you? Does it make sense? Great. Yes. All right. So one of the first tips that I love to tell my speakers is the concept that comes from theater, right? I've got a lot of history in theater. I'm in a theater company now that is called show, not tell. So that's that wah, wah, wah that Kathleen was talking about. When we can actually show something, like you can probably remember me being in the hull, right? There's certain images that you might catch, or there's certain things that I might catch you. In fact, if you never remember anything I say about expansion and contraction, you'll probably remember, oh, she was hit by a car and she was okay, right? That's probably and you don't have to have that kind of story. I actually had one person who came to my last program who said, I don't have a trauma in my background. I don't have anything wrong with me. I don't have a story. She wanted to speak on stage, but she doesn't have anything to talk about. Well, of course, what we pulled out of her was hilarious, amazing, this combination of this rebel and this person who really wants to help in terms of how you do sales. She's just an incredible speaker now. So, show, not tell. Be able to let your information land in your body so that when you're actually expressing it, it's not from here up. It's really throughout you. So you're emanating energy no matter what you do. It's a concept called Wei Qi in Chinese medicine, and it's got to do with protective energy, how we keep out pathogens and allergens. And in the Qigong system, Wei Qi has to do with, I think of it as boundaries, but boundaries in the best sense of I am as opposed to you can't. The difference. So I am expanding out from that central place, which I've taught here at Rebecca several times, so I'm not going to do that here today. The second thing I think that I want to say about, if you're somebody who speaks, and we all do, right? We either speak to clients or customers, we speak to members of our family, we speak to our communities, we speak to our churches or synagogues or mosques, we speak, right? We speak, whether it's in a large group or in a small group, is what do you do about the details? How much of you is going into one detail after another after another? That's the wah, 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 thing where you're starting to talk and you notice everybody's sort of looking at their texts or whatever. So, first of all, too many details, problem. Too few details, problem. Because when you're talking to either a person or to a group of people, you want to invite them into the movie of what you're experiencing, of what your life is. You want to let them feel it. You want to have them forget that they're just sitting in a room. You want to have that sense of painting, brushstrokes of whatever it is that you're wanting to convey. So the third thing that I want to say in terms of this speaking thing, but before I even say that, what I'm going to say is I believe that when we tell our stories, we change the world. I actually have a big passion about this. I really believe when we tell our stories, tell them well in a way that lands, that creates a potential to create a culture of empathy like nothing else. When we're just in our information, that's when we start to lose it. The third thing is about pivoting. Being able to pivot how we see something, how do we shift from, for example, if you're in a contraction, how we shift the story that we tell ourselves about that. How do we work with that particular story? The potential for pivot is really, really high. I think some of you have heard the story that I told. I had a student I used to teach at a graduate program of holistic health. She came up to me one day. She says to me, she was pregnant. She was about 7 or 8 months pregnant. She says she was just in the park and she had this incident that happened and she used something that I taught her and she wanted me to know what it was because it made such a difference. I said, tell me. She says she went to the park with her fiancé. He was going to propose to her. She had actually designed the ring, so it wasn't really a surprise. But anyway, they get to this park bench where they used to date when they were first getting together and he was going to propose to her and she accepted. While they're there talking about this future family that's coming, a guy comes up to them and he's holding a homemade sign and he says to you, do you have any money? She says, no. We're having a moment right here, so I really would love to go back to it. He says, I'm having a moment too. And he says, are you pregnant? Right? She says, yes. He says, well, I hope your baby dies. She felt like a snake had bit her, that there was venom going through her whole body. Then she remembered this practice I had taught her the year before. So she gets up with her fiancé, she stands with her feet apart, she does this energy movement called lotus waft. As she does this movement, she imagines that love is being spread out across the park to that couple over there, old couple reading a newspaper, or to those little kids there on the swings. She started sending love, including to the man who had cursed her in this way. Now, before she did that, she said she felt like she was so afraid her baby was going to be affected by this, that she was so afraid that this was going to create absolutely a horrible birth and the child might not even be alive when it came. She really felt it was in her. Have you ever felt that, where somebody kind of attacks you out of the blue? Or maybe it's just road rage, right? And you just end up looping it again and again. When she started to just do this energy pivot, all of a sudden, she says it changed. I said, did that really work? I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but still, that seemed really simple. She said, yes, absolutely. She was able to completely let that fear go and come to a place of absolute openness and love, hoping that whatever it was that made him so angry, so unhappy, would shift for him. So this ability to pivot how we see something, how we can change things, what is it that we can do to really own it? Because then, when we can tell our story, we can tell our story from a place of total embrace, whether it's the story we're telling ourselves, the story we're telling a client or a customer, the story that we're telling our grandkids or our parents, the story that we're telling from a stage. When we can really start to work with how do we pivot that energy, that would be the third thing. You don't have to do Qigong to do that. I mean, if you want to know about Qigong, come talk to me. You can do it anyhow you want to, but to let it drop into your body. Let yourself feel it from the inside out. Ask yourself, what is it that I want to focus on? And it can actually create magical change. I think the trick is not keeping it in your head, but dropping it down. I know I said that already, but I'm a big proponent in embodied presence. That's what I believe makes that difference. I believe that's what is the element of Wei Qi. So I think we're just about out of time. So I'm going to say thank you so much. I so appreciate your attention. And I want to thank Rebecca for creating another amazing event. Bye.
Are you a speaker looking to reach more people with your message? You have a global vision that you want to touch the world and make a global difference. If so, I have an amazing opportunity for you. It's called the Speaker Talent Search. Again, that's the speakertalentsearch.com. You'll find all the details, but here are the highlights. With one application process, you get clarity on your message. You get to fine-tune how you want to reach the world. Then you'll have everything ready in one place for the opportunities when they come. Second, we select you as a finalist. You get to come in and audition with a 7-minute audition, open up the door to hundreds of speaking opportunities. I hope you lean in. I hope you say yes. We would love to hear your message, help you touch the world powerfully. Again, that's the speakertalentsearch.com. We look forward to hearing your powerful message.